The star chart on the bridge of the Vantrell's Pride glowed a soft blue, showing thousands of star systems connected by thin lines. Every line was a trade route. Every trade route bent around one small yellow star near the edge of the map. That star had a name in every language of every species that had ever looked at the chart. The humans called it Sol. Everyone else just called it the Empty Zone, or the Forbidden Star. And for 300 years, no ship from any of the trading nations had flown close to it. Captain Draven Kor stood at the center of the bridge with his arms crossed behind his back. He was young for a captain, only 40 cycles old, and he had earned his rank by being fast, smart, and willing to take risks that older captains would not take. His crew respected him for that. Some of them also feared him a little, because a captain who takes risks sometimes gets his crew killed. "Explain it to me again," Draven said, looking at his first officer, a tall woman named Issa Vel. "Why does everyone go around this star instead of through it?" Issa pulled up the old records on her screen. "The official reason is trade agreements. There is supposed to be a treaty from centuries ago that keeps that region closed, but nobody living today has ever seen the treaty. Nobody can even say which species signed it." "So it's a rumor," Draven said. "It's a very old rumor," Issa said, "but every single trading fleet, every single mining company, every warship from every empire we know of, goes around it, not through it, around it. That is not normal behavior for a rumor." Draven walked closer to the star chart and tapped the small yellow star with one finger. The light rippled where he touched it. "We are a fast ship, we are barely armed, and we are running low on fuel because our last 2 supply drops fell through. The straight route through this system saves us 11 days. 11 days, Issa. That could mean the difference between reaching the Threll colony in time to sell our cargo, or reaching it after the market crashes and we get nothing." "I understand the math," Issa said quietly. "I am just telling you what the old pilots say. They say ships that fly into that system do not fly back out. Pirates, then, or some hidden mining operation that does not want visitors." Draven smiled, the confident smile that had gotten him out of a dozen bad situations before. "We are not scared of pirates. We have shields. We have weapons. We will fly through quickly, quietly, and nobody will even know we were there." Issa did not smile back. She had flown with 3 different captains before Draven, and every one of them had told the same joke about the Forbidden Star, and every one of them had, in the end, chosen to fly around it anyway. She opened her mouth to argue further, but stopped herself. It was not her ship to command. The Vantrell's Pride was a mid-sized trading vessel, built for speed and cargo space rather than combat. It carried a crew of 18, engineers, gunners, cargo handlers, and 2 junior pilots training under Issa. The ship belonged to a small trading company that operated on the edge of known space, buying rare minerals from mining colonies and selling them to bigger markets closer to the center of the galaxy. It was not a rich company. It could not afford 11 wasted days. 3 hours later, the Vantrell's Pride crossed an invisible line in space that was marked only by a series of old, silent buoys. The buoys were ancient, covered in symbols from a dozen different alphabets, all saying some version of the same warning: "Do not enter. Human space. No permission granted." Draven looked at the warning on his own screen and snorted. "Human space," he repeated. "I have heard of humans. Small, soft-skinned species. Weak eyesight, weak claws. No natural weapons at all. They live on one single planet as far as anyone can tell. One planet, Issa. Not an empire. Not a federation. One planet with, what, 10 billion of them crammed onto it? That is not a threat. That is barely a footnote in the trade registry. Then why is there a 300-year-old warning system built entirely around their star?" Issa asked. Draven did not have a good answer for that, so he changed the subject instead. "Take us in slow, passive sensors only. If there really is something dangerous out here, I would rather see it before it sees us." The crew worked quietly, as the ship slid past the buoys and deeper into the system that everyone else avoided. The bridge was tense in a way it usually was not. Even the junior pilots, who normally chattered to each other during quiet stretches, stayed silent and watched their screens. The first thing they noticed was how empty the space around them seemed. No mining stations, no relay beacons, no signs of any alien infrastructure at all, not even old abandoned ones. It was as if every other species in the galaxy had simply decided this region did not exist. Sensors are picking up faint radio signals, said the ship's communications officer, a nervous young man named Petrie. They are old. Very old. Some of them look like they have been traveling for over 100 years before we picked them up. Play one, Draven said. Petrie fed the signal through the ship's translator. It took a moment to process, since the language was not one the translator had ever heard before. When it finally produced a rough translation, the voice that came through the speakers was strange and warm, and completely unlike anything on the bridge had heard before. It sounded like a woman singing, though the words, once translated, were simple. This is Radio Free Europe, broadcasting to the world. In today's news, the signal cut out into static before it could say more. That is not a military transmission, Issa said, frowning at her console. That sounds like entertainment, public information. This is an old broadcast. How old? Draven asked. Petrie checked the signal decay and the distance it had traveled. Based on the drift, this signal left its source over 130 years ago, Captain. It has been traveling through space this whole time, spreading out farther and farther, getting fainter and fainter. We are just now catching the edge of it. Draven considered this. A species broadcasting entertainment, shows into open space, careless about who might be listening, did not sound like a dangerous, secretive military power. It sounded almost naive. Charmingly primitive even. His confidence, which had wavered slightly at the empty buoys, came back stronger than before. They are broadcasting their culture into open space, like it means nothing, he said. That tells me they either do not understand how dangerous the galaxy is, or they have never needed to worry about it. Either way, that is not the behavior of a species with a war fleet capable of scaring off every other civilization we know of. Unless, Issa said slowly, they do not need a war fleet, unless something else keeps everyone away. Nobody had a good answer for that either. The ship continued deeper into the system, catching more old signals as it went. Some were music. Some were voices arguing about things the crew did not understand. Things called elections and stock markets and sports scores. One signal, picked up almost by accident, was different from the rest. It was shorter, more structured, and repeated itself over and over in a steady loop. Petrie ran it through the translator twice, to be sure he had it right. When he read it aloud, his voice was quieter than before. This is Deep Space Monitoring Station 7. Unidentified vessel, if you are receiving this message, you have entered a restricted system. Please respond on this frequency and state your intentions. If no response is received within 1 hour, defensive protocols will be initiated. This is not a threat. This is a courtesy. The bridge went very quiet. Defensive protocols, Draven repeated. He looked at his sensor readouts. There was still nothing out there. No ships, no stations. Nothing but empty space, and a small yellow star growing slowly larger on the main view screen. There is nobody around to defend anything. This is an automated message, a recording, a leftover warning system that nobody has bothered to update in years. Or, Issa said, it means exactly what it says, and we have 1 hour. Draven looked at the clock on his console. 41 minutes had already passed since the signal was first detected, though nobody could say for certain when the countdown had actually begun, or if it had begun at all. Send a response, Draven ordered. Tell them we are a peaceful trading vessel, passing through on our way to the Threll colony. Tell them we mean no harm, and we will be gone within a day. Petrie typed the message and sent it out on the frequency the warning had come in on. Then everyone waited. Nothing came back. Minutes passed. The star grew larger and brighter on the screen. Somewhere out past the edge of their sensors, the third planet from that star was slowly rotating into the light, though the Vantrell's pride was still too far away to see any detail on it. Draven found himself glancing at the clock more often than he wanted to admit. Sensors are clean, said the tactical officer, a broad-shouldered man named Rurik. No ships, no weapons platforms, no stations of any kind, not even wreckage from old ones. If this system has a defense force, I cannot find it. Then maybe there is no defense force, Draven said, trying to sound more certain than he felt. Maybe there used to be one, a long time ago, and it fell apart, and all that is left is an old recorded warning still playing on repeat because nobody ever turned it off. Issa did not answer him directly. Instead, she pulled up the old trade records again, the ones that mentioned this system, going back further than any of them had checked before. Buried deep in an archive that the company's database had inherited from a merger decades earlier, she found a single entry, an insurance report filed by a ship captain from a completely different company, 118 years earlier. The report was short. Vessel Karan's Reach entered restricted system against captain's recommendation. Vessel did not respond to further communications after entry. No wreckage recovered. Insurance claim denied, due to unauthorized entry into restricted zone. That is one report, Draven said when she showed him. One ship, over a century ago. We do not know what happened to them. Engine failure, pirates, 100 other things could explain a missing ship. There are more, Issa said. She kept scrolling. There were 17 more entries just like it, spread out across 300 years, from different companies, different species, different eras of technology. Every single one said some version of the same thing. A ship entered the system. The ship stopped communicating. No wreckage was ever found. Draven stared at the list for a long moment. The confident smile from earlier had faded from his face, though he tried to keep his voice steady when he spoke again. 18 ships in 300 years, he said. Out of how many thousands of ships that fly through this part of the galaxy every single cycle? That is not a war zone, Issa. That is bad luck. That is engine failure and pirates and reckless captains who should have turned back when they had the chance. Or it is a very effective way of making sure nobody ever finds out what happened to them, Issa said. The hour that the warning message had spoken of came and went. Nothing happened. No ships appeared on their sensors. No weapons fired. The Vantral's Pride continued sailing smoothly through the empty, quiet system, and slowly, the tension on the bridge began to ease. Rurik made a joke about ghost stories. Petri laughed, a little too loudly, the way people laugh when they are relieved. Even Issa allowed herself to relax, just slightly, though she kept one eye on her sensor readout the entire time. Draven allowed himself to feel proud. He had taken the risk that other captains would not take, and it seemed, so far, that the risk was paying off. 11 days saved. A story to tell at every port for the rest of his career. The captain who flew through human space, and lived to talk about it. "Captain," Petri said suddenly, his voice sharp with surprise. "I am picking up something new. It is close, very close." Draven turned toward the screen immediately, the pride draining out of his face. "Show me." On the sensor display, a single point of light had appeared out of nowhere, less than 100 kilometers off their port side. It had not been there a moment ago. It had not approached from any direction their sensors had been watching. It was simply there now, as if it had always been there, and their instruments had only just noticed it. "That is not possible," Rurik said, checking his own readings twice. "Nothing can move that fast, and nothing can hide from our sensors at that range, unless it was never moving at all, unless it has been sitting there the whole time, watching us, and we simply could not see it." Nobody on the bridge said anything for a long moment. The small point of light sat perfectly still on the screen, close enough now that a basic visual scan should have picked up something, a shape, a size, a hull design. Instead, the visual feed showed only empty space, exactly where the sensors insisted something was. "Hail it," Draven said, his voice quieter than before. Petri's hands were shaking slightly as he opened the channel. "This is the trading vessel Vantral's Pride. We mean no harm. Please identify yourself." For a long, silent moment, there was no answer. Then, on every screen on the bridge at once, a single line of text appeared, written in perfect translation, in a language none of the ship's systems had been fed, but which every one of them understood instantly, as though the words had been placed directly into their minds, rather than read off a display. "You should not have come here." The lights on the bridge flickered once, then steadied, and in that quiet, terrible moment, Captain Draven Kor finally understood, deep in his chest, why every ship in the galaxy went around this system, instead of through it. The words stayed on every screen for almost 10 seconds, before they faded away. "You should not have come here." No one on the bridge moved, no one spoke. The only sound was the low hum of the ship's engines, and the quiet beeping of the sensor console, still tracking that single, impossible point of light, floating 100 kilometers off their port side. Captain Draven Kor forced himself to breathe normally. Panicking in front of his crew would not help anyone. "Rurik," he said, keeping his voice as flat and calm as he could manage. "Raise shields, quietly. Do not power the weapons yet. Shields raised, Captain, Rurik answered, though his fingers were moving faster than usual over his console. Petri, try to hail it again. Ask who they are. Ask what they want. Petri opened the channel again, and this time his voice cracked slightly on the first word. Unknown vessel. This is the Vantrell's Pride. We received your message. We are a civilian trading ship. We are not armed for combat. Please, tell us what you want from us. Silence. The point of light did not move. No new message appeared on the screens. Maybe it already said everything it wanted to say, Issa offered quietly. Maybe that was the only warning we get. Draven looked at the small dot on his display, so close, and yet completely invisible to their optical sensors. A ship that could sit within 100 kilometers of them without being seen, that could put words directly into their translation systems without any known transmission method, that had appeared out of nowhere in a supposedly empty system, was not something the Vantrell's Pride could fight. Draven knew that immediately. He was young, but he was not foolish, and he understood the difference between a risk worth taking and a fight already lost. Helm, he said, bring us about. Full reverse thrust. We are leaving this system the way we came. The pilot, a quiet young woman named Senek, worked her controls quickly. Turning now, Captain. Nothing happened. Senek frowned and tried again, harder this time, pushing more power into the maneuvering thrusters. The ship's engines roared louder, the whole hull vibrating slightly with the effort, but on the main screen, the stars did not shift even slightly. The ship was not turning. It was not moving at all. Captain, we are not responding, Senek said, panic creeping into her voice. Engines are at full output. We should be turning. We are not turning. Check the drive systems, Draven ordered. Maybe something failed. Nothing has failed, Rurik said, staring at his diagnostics. Every system reads green. The engines are working exactly as they should be. We are simply not moving relative to that point of light. It is like the space around us has stopped listening to our engines. Issa's voice was very quiet when she spoke next. It is holding us here. Nobody argued with her. The evidence was right there on every screen. Full engine power, and the ship sat as still as a rock in open water, unable to turn even 1 single degree away from the source of that impossible signal. For nearly a minute, nothing else happened. The crew sat frozen at their stations, watching the little dot that had appeared from nowhere, and now seemingly held their entire ship in place, with no visible weapon, no visible tether, nothing at all except its presence. Then, slowly, the dot began to move. It did not accelerate the way a normal ship would. It simply changed position, smoothly, silently, like something being repositioned on a table, rather than a vessel flying through space. It is circling us, Rurik reported. Slow pass, still no visual contact. Whatever this thing is, it is either very small, very stealthy, or both. Or, it does not want us to see it, Draven murmured. The dot completed its slow circle, and then stopped, positioned directly ahead of the Vantrell's Pride. On its previous course, exactly between the trading ship and the small yellow star it had been heading toward, a second message appeared on the screens, the words forming letter by letter this time, instead of all at once, as if whoever, or whatever, was writing it wanted to be sure every word was understood clearly. This system belongs to the people of Earth. Every species that travels these star lanes knows this. The markers were placed 300 years ago and have never been removed, because the warning has never stopped being true. You were told. You entered anyway. Draven felt his throat tighten. He tried to think of something to say, some explanation that would make this misunderstanding go away, but before he could speak, Petri's console chimed with an incoming transmission, a real one this time, not words appearing directly on their screens but an actual audio signal, carried on a standard frequency that any ship in the galaxy could receive. Patch it through, Draven said quickly. The voice that came over the speakers was calm, almost gentle, and spoke in the same language their translator had already been struggling with, though this time the system had enough data to produce a clean, clear translation almost instantly. Vantrell's Pride. This is Lieutenant Commander Alicia Reyes, of the monitoring station Sentry 6. I understand you're scared right now. That's a normal reaction, And I'm not here to make it worse. I need you to listen to me carefully. You are inside a restricted system, and my job right now is to figure out whether you're a threat or just lost. So I'm going to ask you some questions, and I need honest answers. Can you do that for me? Draven exchanged a glance with Issa. The voice did not sound like a threat. It sounded, strangely, almost kind, the way a parent might sound when speaking to a frightened child. But the fact that this ship had appeared from nowhere, had somehow frozen their engines in place with no visible weapon, and clearly represented a species with technology far beyond his own crew's understanding, made the kindness in that voice feel even more unsettling than a threat would have. This is Captain Draven Core of the Vantrell's Pride, he said, trying to steady his voice. We are a civilian trading vessel. We had no intention of causing trouble. We only wanted to cross your system to save time on our route. We did not believe the old warnings were still active. I understand, Commander Reyes said. A lot of ships think that. The markers are old, and it's easy to assume old things don't matter anymore. But I promise you, they matter. Now, tell me honestly, are you carrying any weapons capable of striking a planetary target? Any biological agents, any experimental technology, anything that could be considered a threat to a civilian population? No, Draven said immediately. Nothing like that. We are a mining trade vessel. We carry mineral cargo and basic defensive weapons only, enough to scare off small pirate raids. That is all. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Draven could imagine, though he could not see, someone on the other side checking his claim against sensor data, confirming or denying it with instruments far more advanced than anything on his own ship. Your story checks out, Reyes said finally. Your ship's energy signature matches a civilian trade vessel, and your weapons systems are exactly as basic as you say. That's good. That makes this easier. What happens now? Draven asked. Now, Reyes said, I need you to understand something important, and I need you to really hear it, not just listen politely and forget it the moment you're clear of this system. This region is protected because we protect it, not because of a treaty nobody remembers, and not because of luck. We protect it because a long time ago, before you were probably even born, Captain, several other species decided humanity was an easy target. A soft, weak, primitive little species living on one lonely planet, with no allies and no experience fighting anything beyond ourselves. They were wrong about that. All of them. Every single one. Draven felt a chill run down his back that had nothing to do with the ship's environmental systems. What happened to them? That's a longer story, Reyes said, and for the first time, there was something else in her voice besides calm patience, something that sounded almost like sadness. Some of it, I can tell you now. Some of it, you're about to see for yourself, whether either of us wants that or not. See for myself? Draven repeated. What do you mean? Before Reyes could answer, a new alert sounded on Rurik's console, sharp and urgent. Captain, more contacts, multiple contacts, closing fast from 3 different directions. Draven's stomach dropped. Weapon status? Same as the first one, Rurik said, his voice tight. No visual, no clear energy signature, just points of light on the sensor grid, appearing out of nowhere, closing in. On the comm channel, Reyes spoke again, quickly this time, her calm voice now edged with urgency. Captain Core, listen to me. Those are not hostile. I need you to stay calm, and keep your weapons powered down. I am ordering my escort ships to hold position, and not engage unless you fire first. Do you understand me? Do not fire on them. If your crew fires, even by accident, even out of fear, things will go very badly for you, very quickly. Understood, Draven said, his voice shaking now despite his best efforts to control it. Rurik, weapons stay cold. Nobody touches a trigger unless I give a direct order. Yes, Captain, Rurik said, though his hands hovered nervously near his console anyway. The new contacts slowed as they approached, spreading out to surround the Vantrell's Pride. From multiple angles, though still none of them became visible on the optical sensors, it was as if the ships themselves refused to be seen, no matter how close they came. Draven found himself staring at the empty space where his instruments insisted several vessels now sat, and feeling a deep, primal fear he had never experienced before in his career, the fear of facing something his mind could not even properly picture. Commander Reyes, Draven said carefully. Why can't we see your ships? Our sensors say they are right there, close enough to touch, but our optical scans show nothing at all. There was a brief pause before Reyes answered. That's actually a fair question, and I'll give you an honest answer, because I think you deserve one after the scare we've given you. Our hulls use a coating that bends light around them. It's not magic, it's just very good engineering, developed a long time ago for exactly this kind of situation, where we need a ship to be present without being provocative. A visible fleet surrounding a scared, confused crew tends to cause accidents. An invisible one, paired with a calm voice explaining the situation, tends to prevent them. That is, considerate, Draven said, though the word felt strange in his mouth given the circumstances. We try to be, Reyes said. Humanity learned a long time ago that fear makes people do stupid things, including us. So we've built our defenses around not needing fear to keep this system safe. We'd rather explain things clearly and let people make good choices. Most of the time, that works out fine, and everyone leaves peacefully, with a much better understanding of where the line is. Most of the time, Draven repeated. What about the times it does not work out fine? Reyes was quiet for a moment before answering. Those times, Captain Core, are the reason the warning markers still say what they say. I think it would be more useful and more honest if I showed you rather than told you. With your permission, I'd like to transmit a data packet to your ship. Historical record. Public information, nothing classified. It explains what happened the last time a fleet decided to test us, instead of listening to the warnings. I think it will answer most of the questions you and your crew are probably asking yourselves right now. Draven looked around the bridge. Issa gave a small, tense nod. Rurik and Petri looked equally uncertain, but nobody objected. Whatever this data packet contained, it seemed far better to understand the danger clearly than to keep guessing at it in fearful silence. Send it, Draven said. Sending now, Reyes replied. Fair warning, Captain. It's not an easy thing to watch, but I think your crew needs to see it. And honestly, I think every crew that comes through here should see it, before they decide whether crossing this system is really worth the 11 days they think they're saving. The data packet arrived on Petri's console a moment later, a large file, far larger than any simple text message, containing recorded sensor footage, official reports, and translated survivor testimonies collected from a dozen different species over the better part of a century. As Petri began to play the first recording on the ship's main screen, the bridge fell into a heavy, uneasy silence, and Captain Draven Core felt, for the first time since taking command of the Vantrell's Pride, that he was about to learn something he would never be able to forget. The recording began with a date stamp, 87 years in the past, and a label that simply read, The Thalaran Incursion, Public Record, Declassified for General Viewing. The first images showed a massive fleet, hundreds of warships arranged in tight battle formation, sliding silently through open space toward a small, blue and green planet. Draven recognized the ship designs immediately, even 87 years out of date. They belonged to the Thalaran Combine, a powerful, old empire known across dozens of star systems for its disciplined military and its long history of conquest. The Thalarans had subdued 11 other species over the centuries, absorbing their worlds, their resources, and their populations into the Combine's endless expansion. A voice narrated over the footage, translated smoothly into the same language Reyes had spoken in. It was not Reyes's voice. It sounded older, more formal, like a historian reading from a report rather than explaining something in person. In the year marked by human records as 2037, the Thalaran Combine launched what remains the single largest military operation ever recorded against the planet Earth. Combine intelligence at the time believed Earth to be a young, technologically limited species, recently emerged into interstellar travel, defended by a small and disorganized fleet. Their assessment was based on radio broadcasts intercepted decades earlier, broadcasts that Earth had sent out carelessly, without any understanding of who might be listening. Draven glanced at Issa. That detail matched exactly what they had picked up earlier that day, the old radio and entertainment signals drifting endlessly through space. Apparently, the Thalarans had made the same mistake, listening to those broadcasts and concluding that a species who sang songs and argued about sports on open channels could not possibly be dangerous. The footage continued, showing the massive Thalaran fleet approaching the outer edge of the solar system. For a long stretch of the recording, nothing happened. No ships rose to meet them. No weapons fired. The fleet moved closer and closer, past the orbit of the outer planets, and still, Earth's defenses remained silent. The Combine fleet advanced without resistance for 11 days, the narrator continued. Thalaran commanders grew confident, believing their intelligence had been correct, that Earth possessed no meaningful defense capable of challenging a fleet of this size. On the 12th day, as the fleet crossed the orbital line of the planet Mars, that belief was tested for the first and only time. The footage shifted suddenly. What had been a calm, orderly approach became chaos in the span of a few seconds. Small, fast-moving objects appeared on the recorded sensor data, too many to count individually, converging on the Thalaran fleet from dozens of different angles at once. There were no dramatic explosions of light, no grand battle cries translated into text, nothing that looked like the kind of war footage Draven had seen from other conflicts in his lifetime. Instead, ship after ship in the Thalaran formation simply stopped responding. Engines went dark. Weapons systems fell silent. One by one, entire vessels drifted lifelessly in space, their crews still aboard, their hulls completely intact, but every system on board completely disabled. Human forces did not destroy the Thalaran fleet, the narrator explained. They disabled it. Every ship, all 412 vessels, was rendered inoperable within 6 minutes, without a single hull breach, without a single confirmed human casualty, and, notably, without the deliberate loss of a single Thalaran life either. The technology used to achieve this remains classified to this day, even from allied species. What is known is that it targeted only the ship's systems and left every living being aboard those ships completely unharmed. Draven stared at the screen, unable to fully process what he was seeing. An entire invasion fleet, one of the largest ever assembled, stopped cold in 6 minutes, with no casualties on either side. It did not match anything he understood about war. Wars were supposed to be costly. Wars were supposed to leave wreckage and grief behind, on both sides, as proof of how seriously the fight had been taken. What happened to the crews? Issa asked quietly, though she was not speaking to anyone in particular, just voicing the question that hung over the whole bridge. As if answering her directly, the narration continued. The 412 disabled vessels were towed to a holding position within the system by unmanned human recovery craft. Over the following weeks, every surviving crew member, numbering just over 60,000 individuals, was given food, medical care, and safe housing aboard a temporary orbital facility built specifically for this purpose. No prisoners were harmed. No prisoners were interrogated using force. Each crew member was instead given access to educational material about Earth, its history, and the reasons behind its defensive policies, before eventually being returned to Thalaran space, aboard their own repaired ships, 3 months after the failed invasion began. They repaired the ships, Draven said aloud, disbelief plain in his voice. They captured an entire invasion fleet, and then they fixed it and sent it home? There's more, Reyes's voice said suddenly over the comm channel, cutting back in as the recorded footage paused on the screen. That's the part most people focus on, because it's the strangest part to understand if you don't know us. But it's not actually the most important part of the story. Then what is? Draven asked. Keep watching, Reyes said simply. The footage resumed. The next section showed a formal meeting, recorded from a stationary camera, in what appeared to be a large, plain conference room. On one side of a long table sat several Thalaran officials, their uniforms marked with high military rank, their expressions unreadable to Draven, who was not familiar with Thalaran facial structures. On the other side sat a small group of humans, none of them in military uniform, dressed instead in simple, dark clothing that Draven found strangely unremarkable for a species that had just humiliated one of the galaxy's most powerful militaries. A human woman near the center of the table spoke first, her words translated smoothly by the recording's built-in subtitles. We are not interested in your territory. We are not interested in your resources. We have never once sent a ship beyond our own system with the intention of conquest, and we have no intention of starting now, regardless of what you tried to do to us. What we are interested in is making sure this never happens again, not because we are angry, but because next time, we might not be as careful as we were this time. One of the Thalaran officials responded, his translated voice heavy with something that might have been anger, or might have been simple confusion. You had the power to destroy us completely, an entire fleet, helpless before you. Any other species in this galaxy would have taken that opportunity. Why did you not? The human woman's answer was calm, almost simple, delivered without any hint of pride or cruelty. Because killing 60,000 people who were following orders would not have taught your Combine anything, except that we are dangerous. We already knew that about ourselves. What we wanted your Combine to understand is that we are not interested in being dangerous toward anyone who leaves us alone. There is a difference between those two things, and it is a difference that matters a great deal to us. The recording paused there, and Reyes's voice came back over the comm. That meeting became the foundation of the treaty markers you saw on your way in, Captain Core. Humanity offered every species in known space the same simple deal. Leave our system alone, and we will leave you alone. Test that boundary, and we will stop you, completely, without needing to kill anyone, but also without any guarantee that we will be quite so gentle a second time, from the same fleet, or the same nation. The Thalaran Combine accepted those terms. So did every other species that has tried something similar since. How many have tried since? Draven asked, his voice barely above a whisper now. 4 more incursions in the 87 years since, Reyes said. 2 military fleets testing our defenses on purpose, believing the first story was exaggerated or outdated. 1 group of scientists who genuinely believed the restricted zone was hiding something valuable and tried to sneak past our defenses to study it. And 1, unfortunately, a group of raiders who assumed a species that had shown mercy once would show mercy again, and tried to use that mercy against us directly. What happened to that last group? Issa asked. Reyes was quiet for a long moment before answering. That is the one part of this story I am not going to share with you today, Captain Core. Not because I want to hide it from you, but because I do not think it is necessary for you to hear it, given that your crew has already told me the truth about your intentions, and given that I believe you. I would rather you understand what mercy looks like from us than spend the rest of this conversation afraid of what happens when that mercy runs out. I think that fear would do you more harm than good, and it would not change the choice in front of you right now anyway. Draven absorbed that answer slowly, the weight of it settling over him along with everything else he had just learned. He thought about his own ship, small and lightly armed, sitting helplessly in the grip of technology his crew could not even see, let alone understand or fight against. He thought about the 11 days he had hoped to save by crossing this system, and how absurdly small that number felt now compared to everything at stake. Commander Reyes, he said finally, choosing his words carefully. I understand now why the warnings exist. I understand that we made a mistake coming here, and I understand that we are, right now, completely at your mercy. In a way my ship has never been at anyone's mercy before. I want to ask you plainly, what happens to us now? There was a brief pause before Reyes answered, and when she did, her voice had returned to the same calm, steady tone she had used at the very beginning of their conversation. The tone that Draven now understood was not simply professional politeness, but something closer to genuine patience, the kind a teacher might use with a student who had made an honest mistake, rather than a deliberate crime. Now, Captain Core, she said, we are going to have a conversation about exactly what happens next, and I think, given everything you've just learned, you and your crew are finally ready to actually listen. The bridge of the Vantrell's pride felt different after the recording ended. The fear was still there, but it had changed shape. Before, the crew had been afraid of the unknown, of invisible ships and impossible technology, and a voice that seemed to know everything about them, without ever showing its face. Now the fear had softened into something closer to respect, mixed with a deep, uncomfortable awareness of just how small their little trading ship truly was, compared to the power that had let them live. I want to be honest with you, Draven said into the comm channel, his voice steadier now than it had been at any point since the first message appeared on their screens. We came here because we were desperate to save time and money. That is the whole truth. We did not come here to spy, or to test your defenses, or to prove anything. We were simply arrogant enough to think an old warning did not apply to us anymore. I believe you, Reyes said. And for what it's worth, Captain, that kind of arrogance is not unique to your crew. It's actually the most common reason ships end up where you are right now. Most people who cross that line aren't villains. They're just people in a hurry, who convince themselves that a 300-year-old rule couldn't possibly still matter. But it does matter, Draven said. It does, Reyes agreed. And I think you understand why now, better than you did an hour ago. Draven looked around the bridge at his crew. Issa stood with her arms crossed, watching the comm display closely. Rurik sat rigid at his weapons station, hands still resting carefully away from the controls. Petri looked pale, his earlier nervous energy replaced by a kind of stunned quiet. Senek, at the helm, had not said a word since the engines had failed to respond nearly an hour earlier. "What do you need from us?" Draven asked. "A few things," Reyes said. "First, I need you to understand that your ship is not going to be harmed, and neither is your crew. That's not a threat I'm hiding behind kindness. That's simply not how we do things here, and I already explained why. Second, I need to ask you some questions about your company, your trade routes, and how word about this system usually spreads among traders like you. I'm not asking so we can punish anyone. I'm asking because the more people understand the real reason for the warning, instead of just treating it like an old superstition, the fewer ships end up exactly where you are today." "That seems reasonable," Draven said. "Good," Reyes said. "Third, and this is the part that matters most for you personally, Captain. When we release your ship, and we will release your ship, I am going to ask you to carry a message forward. Not a threat, not propaganda, just the truth. The same truth you just watched with your own crew. I want you to tell other captains what actually happened here today, instead of letting the story turn into another vague rumor about ghost ships and bad luck. The clearer the truth is, the fewer people get hurt by not understanding it." Draven nodded slowly, even though he knew Reyes could not see the gesture. "I can do that." "I appreciate it," Reyes said. "Now, before we get to the questions, I imagine your crew still has questions of their own. I don't usually get much time to answer them, since most ships that come through here are a lot less cooperative than yours has been. But you've earned a little patience from me today, so go ahead, ask what you want to ask." For a moment, nobody on the bridge spoke, each of them hesitant to be the first to break the silence. Finally, it was Issa who stepped forward, her voice carrying the same steady confidence she usually reserved for piloting emergencies. "Commander Reyes, if humanity truly does not want territory, and does not want conquest, why keep this entire system closed off at all? Why not simply open trade, the way every other advanced species does? You could gain enormous wealth from opening your borders to the wider galaxy." "That's a fair question," Reyes said. "The honest answer is that we're not entirely closed off. Earth does trade with a small number of species, ones we've built trust with slowly, over decades, through careful diplomacy rather than open borders. What we don't allow is unrestricted access, because unrestricted access invites exactly the kind of situation we just walked your crew through. Humanity's history includes a lot of hard lessons about what happens when a less experienced group opens its doors too quickly to outsiders who do not have good intentions. We decided, as a species, that we would rather grow our relationships with the wider galaxy slowly and carefully, even if it costs us some wealth in the short term, than repeat mistakes from our own past on a much larger scale." "Mistakes from your own past?" Petri asked quietly, finding his voice for the first time in a while. "Long before humanity ever reached the stars," Reyes said, "our own history includes plenty of examples of powerful groups taking advantage of less experienced ones, right here, on our own planet. We learned, the hard way, over centuries, what happens when trust is given too quickly, to people who do not deserve it. When we finally reached the stars ourselves, we decided we were not going to make the same mistake again, whether the danger came from outside our system or from within it." Rurik spoke next, his voice rough but curious. "The technology you used against the Thalaran fleet, the way you disabled every ship without killing anyone, what is it? How is that even possible?" There was a small pause before Reyes answered, and when she did, her tone carried a hint of something almost like amusement. "That, officer, is one question I am not going to answer today, not because I don't trust you personally, but because that information stays close to home for very good reasons. I will tell you this much though, it was not built as a weapon first. It was built for something else entirely, a peaceful purpose, and only later did we realize it could be used to protect ourselves without needing to take lives. A lot of our best defenses started out that way. We generally prefer tools that can do more than one job." Draven found himself studying the small, invisible point of light still holding steady on his sensor display, marveling at how much restraint had gone into building something so powerful, without turning it immediately into an instrument of destruction. It went against everything he had assumed about how the galaxy's most dangerous forces were supposed to think. "Commander," Draven said, "may I ask one more question, a personal one?" "Go ahead," Reyes said. "You've spoken to us this whole time like you actually care whether we understand any of this. Like you actually want us to leave here safely, and even want us to think well of your species afterward. Given everything you've just shown us, given how much power you clearly hold over ships like mine, why does that matter to you at all?" Reyes was quiet for a long moment before she answered, and when she finally spoke, her voice had softened into something that sounded, for the first time, less like an official giving a briefing, and more like a person sharing something she genuinely believed. "Because power without patience just makes more enemies, Captain Core. My grandparents used to tell me stories about wars fought long before humanity ever left our own planet. Wars that started because someone with power decided fear was easier than patience. We could have destroyed that Thalaran fleet 87 years ago in about 30 seconds. We had every capability to do it, and honestly, a lot of people back on Earth thought we should have. But my government decided, and most of humanity agreed with them, that showing mercy when we clearly did not have to, would say something far more important about who we are, than simply proving how strong we are. Strength is easy to prove. Trust takes a lot longer to build, and it's worth a lot more once you have it." Draven let those words settle over him for a moment, before responding. "I think I understand," he said quietly. "And I think, whether you meant it to happen this way or not, you have earned a measure of that trust from me today." "That's good to hear, Captain," Reyes said, and this time there was warmth clearly audible in her voice. "Now, with that said, I do still have a job to do, and part of that job is making sure your ship leaves this system safely, without incident, and without any confusion about what happens next. So let's get through those questions I mentioned, and then we'll talk about getting you back on course toward the Threll colony. I imagine that cargo of yours is still worth something, even after the delay." "It is," Draven admitted, allowing himself a small, tired smile for the first time since the ordeal had begun. "Though I suspect 11 saved days is not worth quite what I thought it was this morning." "Most captains figure that out eventually," Reyes said. "You're just lucky enough to figure it out while you're still alive to remember the lesson." The questioning that followed was thorough but calm, covering the details of the grade. Vantrell's pride. As trade company, its usual routes, and how information about the restricted zone typically spread, or failed to spread, among independent traders operating on the edges of known space. Draven answered honestly, grateful now for the chance to be useful rather than simply helpless, and slowly, as the conversation continued, the tension on the bridge began to ease into something closer to ordinary exhaustion, the kind that follows any brush with genuine danger once the immediate threat has passed. None of them yet knew exactly how their ship would leave the system, or what waited for them once they crossed back over the old warning buoys into the wider, familiar galaxy beyond. But for the first time since the message had first appeared on their screens, Captain Draven Core found himself feeling something other than fear. He felt, strangely, almost grateful, for a lesson learned the hard way, but learned without cost, at the hands of a species that could have destroyed his ship without a second thought, and had chosen, instead, to teach him something worth remembering for the rest of his life. 2 hours after the questioning ended, Commander Reyes came back on the comm channel, with a tone in her voice that suggested the hardest part of the conversation was finally behind them. "Captain Core, I've reviewed everything with my superiors, and we're ready to release your ship. Before we do, there are a few practical matters to settle, and then we'll get your engines working again." "I'm listening," Draven said. "First, your ship's logs from this encounter will remain intact. We don't erase memories, and we don't ask you to hide what happened here. If anything, we'd prefer you keep a clear, honest record. Second, we're going to escort you to the edge of the system, the same way we escort every ship that leaves here peacefully. It's not a punishment. It's simply how we make sure you get back across the boundary safely, and it gives my people a chance to confirm nothing was missed during our conversation. Third, and this is more of a personal request than an official one, I'd like you to consider something before you go." "What is that?" Draven asked. Humanity doesn't get many chances to talk with outsiders under calm circumstances, Reyes said. Most of the ships that come through here either turn back at the buoys, or arrive with hostile intentions, or, like yours, wander in without understanding what they're walking into. It's rare that we get to have an actual conversation, the kind where both sides walk away having learned something true about each other, instead of just reacting out of fear. I'd like you to remember that part too, not just the warning. Earth isn't just a fortress with a strict rule painted on the front door. It's home to people who would genuinely like to be good neighbors to the rest of the galaxy, when the circumstances allow for it. Draven thought about that for a moment, turning the words over in his mind. I will remember that, he said. I think my whole crew will. That's really all any of us can ask for, Reyes said. Now, let's get you home. Senec, is it? Your pilot? Senec straightened at her console, surprised to be addressed directly. Yes, Commander. You're going to feel your engines respond again in just a moment, Reyes said. The hold we placed on your ship is being released gradually, so you don't get thrown off balance by a sudden change. Ease into your turn slowly, and follow the lead ship. You won't be able to see it, but your sensors will track its position clearly enough to follow. A moment later, Senec gasped softly, as her controls responded to her touch for the first time in hours. Engines are answering, Commander. I have full control again. Good, Reyes said. Bring her around, nice and easy. We'll be right alongside you the whole way out. The journey back toward the boundary buoys took several hours, far longer than the fast, confident approach that had brought them into the system in the first place. Draven found himself standing at the front of the bridge for most of that time, watching the small yellow star shrink slowly behind them, thinking about everything he had learned in a single day that had completely reshaped his understanding of the galaxy he thought he knew. Issa joined him partway through the journey, standing quietly at his side for a while before speaking. You did well today, she said. I know that is not what it felt like from the inside, but you kept this crew calm, you asked the right questions, and you got us out of here without anyone getting hurt. That matters more than the 11 days we lost. I almost got us all killed, Draven said quietly, because I did not want to believe an old story could still be true. Every captain makes that mistake eventually, Issa said. Most of them just do not live long enough to learn from it. You did. Draven managed a small, tired smile at that. I suppose I owe Commander Reyes more than a simple thank you for that particular gift. As the Vantrell's pride approached the old warning buoys once more, Reyes's voice returned to the comm channel one final time. This is where we say goodbye, Captain Kor. You're clear to continue on your original course from here. My escort will hold position at the boundary until you're well outside the system. After that, you're free to go on your way. No restrictions, no further questions. Commander, Draven said, before we go, I want to ask you something honestly, and I would appreciate an honest answer in return, whatever it may be. Go ahead, Reyes said. Do you think we deserve the mercy you showed us today? My crew and I came here uninvited, ignored warnings that were placed for good reason, and put your people to the trouble of dealing with us for hours. A harder response would have been justified, by most standards I have seen in this galaxy. Reyes did not answer right away. When she finally spoke, her voice carried the same calm patience it had held throughout their entire conversation. Deserving mercy isn't really how we think about it, Captain. Mercy isn't a reward for good behavior. It's a choice we make about who we want to be, regardless of what the other side has earned. You made a mistake today, a serious one, but it came from carelessness, not cruelty. That distinction matters to us. If you'd come here with weapons raised, looking for a fight, this conversation would have gone very differently, and I don't think either of us would enjoy discussing how differently. But you didn't. You made a mistake, you listened when we explained it, and you're leaving here a little wiser than you arrived. That's exactly the outcome we hope for, every single time this happens. Thank you, Draven said simply, unable to find better words for the gratitude he felt. Travel safely, Captain Kor, Reyes said, and remember what you promised. Tell the story honestly, the whole story, not just the scary parts. The galaxy needs fewer rumors about us, and a little more understanding. That helps everyone, including you and your crew the next time you're tempted to cut a corner on a long trade route. I will, Draven said. You have my word. The comm channel closed with a soft click, and slowly, the small points of light that had surrounded the Vantrell's pride. For the past several hours began to drift away, one by one, fading back into whatever quiet, invisible patrol pattern they normally kept along the edge of human space. Within a few minutes, the ship's sensors showed nothing around them at all, just empty space, and the old, silent warning buoys sliding past their hull as they crossed back over the boundary line and out into the wider galaxy beyond. The bridge was quiet for a long while after that, each member of the crew lost in their own thoughts about what they had just experienced. It was Petrie who finally broke the silence, his voice carrying a note of wonder that had replaced his earlier fear entirely. "Do you think anyone is going to believe us when we tell this story?" he asked. "Probably not at first," Issa said. "Most of them will assume we are exaggerating, the way sailors always exaggerate stories about the places they have been. But we have the recording Commander Reyes sent us. That should help." "It should," Draven agreed, "though I think the real proof will be simpler than any recording. Every trader who hears this story will still see that warning marker sitting exactly where it has always been. Still watch every other ship in the galaxy fly around this system instead of through it. And now, at least, they will finally understand why." Months later, docked at the busy trading port of the Threll colony, Captain Draven Kor would tell the story of the Vantrell's pride. His journey through human space to a crowded room of fellow captains, traders, and curious onlookers who had heard rumors about what happened, but wanted the truth from someone who had actually lived through it. He told it exactly the way he had promised Commander Reyes he would, honestly, completely, including the parts where his own arrogance had nearly gotten his entire crew killed, and the parts where a species with the power to destroy his ship without effort had instead chosen patience, understanding, and a hard but fair lesson delivered with genuine kindness. Some captains in that room laughed nervously, unwilling to fully believe a story that sounded more like a legend than a real encounter. Others listened in complete silence, recognizing in Draven's careful, honest telling something that matched the old warnings they had always assumed were exaggerated rumors, but had never quite dared to test for themselves. And a few, the wisest ones in the room, simply nodded slowly, filing the story away, alongside all the others they had heard over the years about the quiet, careful, endlessly patient species that guarded one small yellow star at the edge of known space. A species that never went looking for trouble, but that every single spacefaring civilization in the galaxy had, by unspoken agreement, learned never, ever to test, without a very good reason. The warning buoys stayed exactly where they had always been, unchanged, unmoved, silently marking the edge of a system that every ship in the galaxy still chose to fly around rather than through. But now, at least one more crew understood exactly why, and carried that understanding with them, from port to port, story to story, keeping the truth alive a little longer in a galaxy that badly needed to remember it. And somewhere out past that boundary, on a quiet blue and green planet that had learned its own hard lessons long before it ever reached the stars, humanity continued doing what it had always done best, watching patiently, protecting quietly, and waiting, without fear, for whoever came next.